All right. Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for attending our IT showcase. This is the 43rd National BDPA conference. This is our second year being virtual. And the conference, as you can see, takes place the August the 12th through the 14th. And our theme for this year is Powered Together, a Revolution of Excellence. One second. Here we go. And this is our 18th IT Showcase competition. And our founder, which I'll introduce in a second, is Dr. Jesse Bimley, who is also the founder of HSCC. Oh, goodness gracious, what are we doing here? Pardon me for a second. All right, here we go. Well, I want to welcome our judges, and which I'll have them introduce themselves in 1 second. And then I also want to thank our corporate sponsors, which is J&J and Lilly. So now I would like for us to introduce our judges. And let's start with Ms. Connie.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Consuela Burton, but everyone calls me Connie. I'm from Johnson & Johnson. I have been in IT with J&J for over 25 years. I'm a senior manager responsible for all of the operations associated with our HR applications globally.
All righty. We can go to our next judge, Alethea.
Okay, thank you. Got to get computer savvy here. Hi, everyone. My name is Alethea Wimberly, and I work with Health and Human Services, specifically for Omaha, where we handle Medicaid and Medicare issues. What I do is I have over about 35 years experience in both the government and the private sector for IT. I have experience from mainframe to enterprise servers to a desktop and cell phone applications. So this is my first time being a judge, and it has been wonderful. So thank you, and I look forward to the rest of the presentation.
Thank you. Dante.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Dante Mercer. I'm currently Director of Risk and Compliance, Security Risk and Compliance for a company named Acoustic, which is a company that was divested from IBM some time ago. I've been in the IT industry for 25 years and worked in areas such as data center management, systems management, managed a number of IT support teams and systems administrators. And looking forward to hearing the rest of you guys' presentations.
Thank you. Kedrick.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kedrick Jones, and I'm currently IT director for Little Rock Housing Authority, basically providing housing assistance to the Little Rock area, and I'm also a tech consultant business owner.
Thank you. And Sam.
Good afternoon, greetings. I am Sam Nixon, and my company is Humble One, based here in Alexandria, Virginia, and we do consulting and STEM education and training for marginalized communities, including those in incarcerated facilities, helping them to acclimate to the technologies that would help them to become competitive in the workforce development areas there.
All right. Thank you so much, judges. We really do appreciate it. get to our next item here. Okay, just real quickly, kind of go over our agenda for today. My name again is Janice Lee. I am the IT Showcase Program Manager, and it's my privilege to welcome our students, and then we'll have an introduction to them pretty soon, and also our judges. And I want to thank our coordinators who help our students prepare recruiting and prepare for this journey. A big thank you to you, and then all of our participants who are out there who are listening to give them their support. We really appreciate it. Now, without any further ado, I would like to give a warm welcome to our founder of HSCC. Our founder of the IT Showcase is Dr. Bimley. Dr. Bimley, are you on mute?
Thanks, Janice.
You're welcome.
This is a great day. We are heading into the last major portion of the event for the students. And this morning we had some great poster presentations, and you'll be able to see those tomorrow morning. And so I'm just so happy. Thank you, Janice.
All righty. So now we're going to be introducing our students. Our first student up is Sama Abdi, and Dr. Bimley will do introductions for each of the students. And Sama, you may go ahead and start sharing.
Sama is a rising freshman, and she's a member of the Atlantic chapter. This is her first year in the IT Showcase. So she doesn't qualify to compete this year, but we are allowing her to participate so that she can get that warm, fuzzy, exciting feeling of being a part of this, so that next year when she actually competes, she will be one of the crew, and maybe even bring in one of the medals. So, Sama, are you ready to introduce your research to the judges? And
ready as I'll be in 100 years.
All right.
Okay, my topic, self-driving cars, ethics and safety. First, I want to define what a self-driving car is. An autonomous car can drive without any human assistance. So you could sit and read a book or do anything else, and it wouldn't need you to do anything. Some of them wouldn't have steering wheels in the future, or gas pedals, or even brakes, because the driver wouldn't need it since they wouldn't be driving. The car would handle everything, such as turning, braking, parking, and everything that an ordinary driver would have to do. But not all of them are the same. The variety of automated engineers find them from going from 0 to 6. 0 is the same thing as an ordinary car, which we drive ourselves, because it has 0 artificial intelligence in it. And 6 is completely controlled by the computer. That's the car I'm talking about right now. What does it mean if it's completely controlled by the computer? It means that we have absolutely no control. If anything happens, we can't stop what the car is doing. We can't try to make it stop or turn because there is no steering wheel or brake. We have no power over what happens. But on March 18, 2018, the first person killed by a self-driving car was hit. Her name is Elaine Hertzberg, and she was 49 years old. The car struggled to correctly identify her as a human being on the side of the road. But once it did, it still wasn't able to predict that she would cross in front of it because she jaywalked and it didn't realize that. Instead, it failed to execute the correct evasive maneuver in time. what if there was a way to let it know when we were close by? My method uses a device similar to SMO Beacon, which is used for workers who work in factories or similar places where many people are working in a smaller space. When two workers are too close and are social distancing, the device would light up and beep. This would alert them, and it would let them know that they are too close. It would be similar, except it wouldn't track where the person goes, due to most people being concerned that it would tell the company wherever they are. It would just react to the little waves that we sent out by the car and let the car and the person know that there's a car or person in proximity. The second part of my idea, okay, and for this, these are the different ways they can be worn or used. The second part of my idea is that a beacon, once those beacons are used, later on, if it isn't working and there's a situation where an accident's about to occur, security feed of situations polluting accidents can be obtained and given to a computer. The computer can then make hundreds of near perfect solutions to those problems. And when that situation looks like it's about to happen, it can use an algorithm that will connect the cars using a connection similar to Bluetooth. Then the cars will move in sync and therefore prevent the accident and not crash into each other while they do that. Now for the pros and cons. For the beacon, the battery could last a long time. Since it isn't beeping or using its sound system all the time, it wouldn't have to be in constant use. So it could last a couple years without having to be replaced. And if mass produced, it could be easily affordable. The cons, however, is that the Bluetooth used in it, or the connection that's similar to Bluetooth, could cause radiation that could harm the body, as Bluetooth and similar wireless signals have been linked to causing cancer or being a contributing factor. This could be prevented by wearing it away from the body, perhaps clipped to your purse or backpack, or just being kept away from vital organs such as your heart, lungs, liver, and other organs that can be affected by the radiation. Okay, thank you for your time. The floor is open for questions, if anyone has any.
Hi, good presentation, Salma. If I can ask, how did you get the interest in self-driving cars, in researching self-driving cars?
What did you say?
I'm sorry, where did the interest come in you researching this element of self-driving cars?
About a year or maybe 2 years ago, me and my family watched this video about what would happen in an ethical dilemma, whether you would have to turn the car to hit one person or another, or whether self-driving car would have to pick who to hit, and each time there would be a casualty. So it made me think about whether you could just prevent it completely, because an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So if you could prevent altogether, there's no need to go through the hassle of creating a solution to who it has to hit. You can just prevent it altogether.
Got it, thank you.
So, did I pronounce that right?
Yes.
Correctly? Hey, I have a question. Just out of curiosity, I know that did you research the companies that are researching that right now, self-driving cars? And isn't there one that does the self-parking for you, parallel parking? And how does that technology operate? Is it similar?
My research hasn't taken me that far into it, but when I was
Okay.
researching, it said that it could do anything that a car would normally do and what a normal driver would have to do. So since a normal driver would have to park, and there wouldn't be any steering wheel, it only made sense that the car would have to park itself. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you.
Selma, thank you again for the presentation. My question is there any, in your research in terms of what happens when there are failures in the detection system and recovery? What are some ways to recover in ways that maximizes protection of the persons there? So for example, if any of the computer systems, for whatever reasons, are failing, how to correct the system? Did you have an opportunity to look into that in your research?
No, my focus was on the solution and not what would happen if it failed. So I think I maybe should add that.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Looking in the future. Thanks for letting me know.
Okay, and the other question is, does it matter in terms of what kinds of cars, the level of minimal level of technology that the cars would have to operate there? Would there have to be a standard set that would impact all of the cars that are on the road today? So I guess I'm asking, would it require complete replacement of all the existing types of cars that are in operation today, or could they all be retrofitted?
Like for the solution to work, do you have to replace all cars on the road?
Yeah, with the solution of having the cars to be, could they be simply fitted with the technology in existing cars, or would it have to be?
My solution is something you can just add to the car. You don't have to trash the whole thing. Because not everyone will buy a self-driving car. But if they do put it on the road, it'd be actually more dangerous to have some human drivers and some computer drivers. So I think it's best to use them. That's what's most important, to use it.
So Salma, they would still have the option to drive the car normal if they wanted to?
My research isn't about how the car itself works and whether you can switch it so you can drive yourself. My research is about what to do to prevent that car from going into an accident.
Gotcha.
And when you were doing your research, did you look at like some of the newer cars predominantly all come with the sensor technology today? So
Yes.
is this just an enhancement upon the sensor technology today that
No.
are already built into some of the cars? Because I saw you had some auxiliary devices that you were showing, but that is, a lot of the cars have it now.
Thanks. That's what I was trying to ask. Carmen.
That device isn't used for cars. It's used for people in workspaces. And I just that you can maybe use it for the situation and alter it.
Okay.
Self-driving cars usually use cameras or lasers or radars. And even though they're improving radars, they don't give a perfect picture and pinpoint the person. So there seems to be flaws with each one. So that's where I got the idea. I hope I answered your question. If not, you let me know.
Thank you.
Okay, any more questions for Salma? All right, let's give her a round of applause with emoji.
I think that what she should do is go back over this recording and listen to the feedback that you got from the judges and see if you can't broaden the perspective upon which you look at this whole driverless car situation. Because they have given you a number of ideas in terms of broadening your perspective. And what I'm hearing from you right now is you trying to hold on to the narrow perspective that you have, whereas the world is much broader. And that's the way that they were giving you feedback, if you will. Am I correct, judges?
Correct. And two cars you can look into, I know the Tesla and I think the new Genesis GB70. It parks itself and the Tesla drives itself.
Thank you, Salma. We look forward to you coming back next year, expanding your research and being able to compete for scholarship dollars. So we are looking forward to that next year.
Thank you. I like your suggestion.
Okay. All righty. Our next student is Sai, I do believe, and he's going to be speaking on technology and speech. So Sai, when you're ready.
All right, yeah, I'm sharing my screen.
Okay, Sai was born in Illinois and he stayed there until he was in the 7th grade. And then he moved on to Minnesota, where he's currently in the 10th grade, attending Alliance Academy of Innovation. And some of his goals are to gain new skills, presentation skills, technology skills, and becoming an engineer. And some of his hobbies, things that he likes to do, are playing basketball, watching basketball on TV. And his favorite team, of course, is the Chicago Bulls, and playing video games. And the video game that he specifically likes to play are the Flight Simulator and Minecraft. And he's interested in the topic of MMI, which he's going to be talking about, because a member of his family is nonverbal. And we have seen this all through the Olympics. We've seen this through a lot of what drives young people to go in the directions that they would like to go into. They want to help people. They've met people that needed help with this or with the help with that. And so it spurred them then to want to go in a direction such that they could do those type of things. And so Sai is going to talk to us about his research based on one of his family members who has a physical issue.
Hey, my name is Sai Serva. I am currently a 10th grader attending Alliance Academy of Innovation in Forsyth County, Georgia. So my topic is technology with speech development issues. And I chose this because my younger brother has autism and he's been nonverbal throughout his whole life. And in parentheses, I also have MMI because that's going to be like the main topic that's going to be discussed in the presentation. So right now in present day, there are alternatives. If you cannot communicate, there are alternative ways to communicate. And that includes the augmented and alternative communication. So that's basically like a tablet or an iPad. It could also be a computer. And it has different pictures and phrases which the user can press and click on. And they're able to communicate like that. Another alternative communication method is sign language. And another one is speech therapy, which a speech therapist annually helps a patient or a child to learn how to speak. And although these three are good alternatives, there's two things to keep in mind. If the person has motor dysfunctionality and speech development issues or like speech issues, then they won't be able to use speech therapy, or they won't even be able to use sign language or even the AAC. And another thing to keep in mind is that these are extremely expensive, because you have speech therapy tuition costs and you have sign language. Even though it is not expensive to learn sign language, you have tuitions to learn sign language, and you have classes tend to learn sign language, and that does cost a lot depending on where you live. And then the AAC also costs a lot, so that's something to keep in mind. So a new technology, so that kind of led me to finding out new technologies that are getting developed for speech issues. And that's where it kind of landed on the MMI. So to be more specific, this is the implanted MMI. And so the one on the right is by Neuralink, which is one of the companies that are developing the MMI. And so their specific type of MMI has a neural thread, which is a kind of thread-like material that is flexible enough to be implanted on the surface of the brain. And so that will basically be wrapped around your brain, and that's going to record and like all your neural signals, your brain signals, your brain waves. And you also have the circle piece, which is the actual MMI. That's where it records and that's where it processes everything. And so that it also has built-in Bluetooth, where it can connect to your phone, it can connect to your computer, it can connect to everything around you. So the procedure that will be used to implant the MMI is automated neurosurgery, and they are developing robotic systems to actually do automated neurosurgery. And this is because the MMI is extremely small, and to use your fingers to implant in your brain would not work because it would not work because it's
1 second, please.
Hold on a second.
Can everyone please mute their phones? Thank you.
do you want me to resume? All right. So the procedure that will be used to implant the MMI is precision automated neurosurgery, and that is done because the MMI is extremely small and fragile, and for you to just do it with your fingers would be pretty tough, and it wouldn't pretty much make sense to do it like that. And another thing to keep in mind throughout this whole presentation is the different parts of the brain. So you have your frontal lobe, you have your parietal lobe, you have your temporal lobe, and each of these different parts of your brain kind of process different parts of what you're going to do. So for example, your frontal lobe, it controls your thought, it controls your memory, and it controls your behavior. Other lobes control your language, your touch, your visual processing, your balance and coordination, hearing, and learning and emotions. And it controls, your brain pretty much just controls breathing, heart rate, and temperature. And another thing to keep in mind is that inside of the brain, you have over 86 billion neurons. And these neurons have 3 parts to them, which is an axon, a soma, and a dendrite. And so you also have synapses, which are basically axon dendrite connections. And so these synapses have chemical reactions that take place inside of them. And depending on the amount of willpower it takes, there's either high voltage in the synapses or there's low voltage. And what the MMI does is that as it's wrapped around, as all those electrodes are wrapped around in the surface of your brain, they're recording and they're immediately processing and then they're decoding everything that's happening in your brain. So really, in conclusion, you can think about how the MMI is not going to be just used for speech issues and motor issues. It can also be used for whether you want to just like turn on your TV, or you could just there's a wide variety of things you can do. And there's also different versions of the MMI. So as I've discussed, on the right side, there is the implanted MMI made by Neuralink. And in the middle, there's the headphone MMI made by Neurable, which is basically the same thing as a normal MMI as seen on the left side, except everything that's in the normal MMI will be placed inside of the headphones. And then you also have the normal MMI, which is almost similar to a EEG scanner. So all of those little white dots are basically electrodes. Those are very large electrodes. However, even though there are these many different versions of the MMI, the non-implanted version is not that good because of your skull and how it disrupts your frequency. It disrupts the recording in your signaling. and what to expect in the future of the MMI, and what will be the future because of the MMI. So the MMI will innovate not only speech technology, but it can also innovate other technologies such as brain-controlled machines, robotics. It can control prosthetic limbs, and there are many companies that are developing the MMI. So there's Neuralink, as we've discussed in the previous slides. There's Neurable, there's Emotive, and there's Kernel, Melton MMI, and BitBrain. Some of these companies have not disclosed what they're doing yet. Some of them are, as seen by Neurable, are taking different approaches of the MMI, which in the case, as seen by Neurable, it's the headphone MMI. And some of these companies are just doing the non-implanted MMI. And as you see through these slides and as you see through the pictures, it can pretty much be you can pretty much tell that they're commercially producing these. So once they do get fully developed, they will be commercially produced, and people can pretty much just buy them. And it will also work. It will also be important for people that have motor issues and speech issues. And then who is the MMI useful for? So the MMI is going to be useful for people with speech disabilities. The MMI is also going to be useful for people with motor disorders. And if you want to add in there, the MMI is also useful for people that just want to turn their Xbox on. But in actuality, those are the two important reasons the MMI is important for. And my summary and recommendations of the MMI. So in conclusion, the MMI will help many people. It will open new doors to new innovations in the future. And then one recommendation I would give for the MMI is that there is going to be radiation, as seen by a lot of technology and a lot of hardware. Anything will have radiation, anything will emit radiation. But I have heard that throughout my research, I've seen that many companies are building protective cases that will emit less radiation and therefore won't really affect your brain. And another recommendation is to make the MMI more accessible for everyone. So at this moment of time, the MMIs that are getting developed, they are only going to be able to be used by people that have been verbal at one point or another in their life. So if you've been nonverbal throughout your whole life, then you can't really use it. And the way the MMI actually works is that you have to think about what you're saying. So you have to think about writing it on a piece of paper. So like if the user wants to say hi, then he has to think that he's writing hi on a piece of paper for it to actually output onto a computer. And that's pretty much it for my slideshow. And thank you for listening to it. And obviously, as seen here at the end, it will help a lot of people with speech development issues and with motor dysfunctionality issues. And if you guys have any questions, you guys can let me know.
No, thank you, Sai, for the presentation. I had just a couple quick questions. The last point you were sharing about those that can't use it. So am I to understand that the reason is they haven't had the experience of that writing, the thinking and writing it down is what prohibits them from being able to access it? Okay.
Yeah, so basically at one point or another, they had to have been verbal and had to have been talking at one point or another in their life, or they know how to write. If they do know how to do all of that, then it's easier for them to understand how to work the MMI. But if they have been nonverbal throughout their whole life and they can't really, write, or depending on their scenario, then it will take a long time. But at the end, I mean, they can reach to that goal of using the MMI, but it will take a long time.
Okay, understood. Thank you. And the other quick question is for those that do have it, whether it's implanted inside or the headphones version that you were mentioning, does environmental weather, I'm thinking particularly the weather, does that impact any of the electrical signals there? So if it's a static environment that someone is in, a thunderstorm or something like that, would that have any measurable effects on the operation?
So at this moment, I know the Neuralink MMI has a protective casing, and I haven't dug that much deep into the protective casing of the MMI for the Neuralink one, but I am pretty sure that the protective casing kind of prohibits from it getting affected by external sources. So such as weather conditions or like electrical kind of things. And then the headphones MMI, I haven't dug that deep into that version of the MMI.
Okay, and it also applies to like the person swimming, if they're swimming or something, with the water or pressure have any impact on it if someone is in a swimming pool?
No, it'll have a protective casing.
Okay, okay, I'm thinking more about pressure on the.
Oh, the
on
pressure.
Pressure on the body.
I haven't dug that deep into the research.
Okay, okay, well, good presentation, thank you.
To piggyback, so that I make sure that I'm clear on the first question that he had asked to you, that Samuel has asked to you. When we're talking about, oh Lord, I just lost it. You were saying for the person who was never verbal. So there are a number of people who have never been verbal, but they can write, they can sign. Would those people still have issues with?
No, they'd be I'm pretty sure, yeah, they'd be able to use it because you have to think about that, like you're writing, what you want to say down, and you have to think about how it's going to sound at the same time. So they would be able to use it.
Okay.
But it might take a while depending on the scenario. It just depends on the user themselves.
Okay.
Right there in your answer, you said they would be able to use it. Then you turn right around and say they wouldn't be able to use it. So you need to be clear on how you say those things, because the judges only have what come from you.
All right.
And so I can understand that it may take them a while because they don't have any basis for comparison, but you also said that it would take them a while, which means that they can use it.
Yeah, they can use it. It just depends on the scenario, basically. There hasn't been that so the MMI is relatively new, so there hasn't been that much research on it. And there's only been a couple of people that have gotten it implanted. And so there's not that much research, and there hasn't been that much research dug up on it.
Well, I got all that. I just want you to make sure that when you are giving a person or a group of people this information, that you're consistent in terms of what you're saying.
Yes, sir. So yeah. Wait, do you want me to?
No, I'm done.
Oh, all right.
I think the comment was really more about when you were talking about nonverbal people using it. There are cases that nonverbal people can use it, but it's more beneficial and easier to use if at one point you were.
Yeah,
I think it's just being clear in how you articulate that message.
All right.
Yeah, and I think I understood your answer to me was that the persons who have not had the experience of writing in the nonverbal piece, they were the ones that I understood you were saying would not be able to use it, because I did hear you say you had to think as if you were writing.
Yeah.
If you haven't had that experience of writing, that person would not be able to avail themselves of the technology.
Yeah. And it also depends on the user. So if it's tough for the user, then it might not work. But if it's easy for the user to understand and use, then it would work.
Okay.
And I'm still having a problem with that, because the more I think about it, when I think about indigenous people, quite often they don't write at all.
Yeah.
But they talk in their language well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I haven't dug that much deep into it, so I can't really.
Well, part of what I was hearing too is I did not hear a correlation between your answer to the audible piece of it there. I was hearing the correlation to the thinking and writing piece. So as I guess, as I'm hearing the advisement, it might be good to maybe distinguish between those who haven't had the experience of writing versus those who had the experience of audibly communicating. Because that would help me too to understand the distinction that you're saying in terms of where the research is there.
All right.
I appreciate your work.
All right, thank you.
Very, very interesting and very engaging.
All right, thank you.
All right, any other questions for assigned judges?
Good
All right,
job.
show a round of applause for Sai. Thank you for this very interesting topic, especially something that has a impact on in your family life. So that makes it really personal. So we do appreciate that. And our next person up is Miss Majesty.
Her Majesty Whitaker Hicks attends Georgia Connections Academy, and she's a rising senior in high school, and she plans to become a pediatrician. And some of her favorite things to do are reading, swimming, and watching TV. And the main reason that she's interested in the research that she's doing, which is the negative effects of screen time, is that she believes that she spends too much of her time on her devices. And that's probably, she never said this to us, but that's probably because her parents have told her that. And so she wanted to learn a little bit more about the consequences of it. And so that's why she chose this area of research. And Majesty, are you ready to share your research with the judges?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So my name is Majesty. I'm doing my research presentation on the negative effects of screen time.
Excuse
need
me a
to
little bit,
become a
Majesty.
little
Could you
closer
speak
to the
up?
mic.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
Say it again.
Can you?
Nobody can hear you now.
Let me see.
So we're all waiting anxiously to hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
We hear you.
Okay. So the agenda for today, on slide 1, we have sensory deprivation. On slide 2, we have random outbursts. Slide 3, we have an interpretation of sensory deprivation and random outbursts. On slide 4, we have sleep deprivation. On slide 5, we have sleep deprivation continued. On slide 6, we have conclusion. On slide 7, we have sources. On slide 8, we have the answers. Sensory deprivation. While a child is focused on their device, they are in a passive state, which means they are sensory deprived. Sensory deprivation is the intentional depletion or removal of stimuli from one or more of the senses. This causes their brain development to be significantly reduced compared to children whose senses are stimulated by things that happen in the real world. On the left head or the left graphic right here, there's a normal child who is stimulated by things in the real world, like playing outside or playing with their friends. On the right graphic, this is a sensory deprived child's brain, but stimulated by TV shows and cartoons. Random outbursts. Violent content children see on TV or online increases the risk of attention and behavioral problems at school age by 110%. Most cartoons today have violent content in them. The images that suggest violent content activate the child's fight or flight instincts, but since it's unreasonable to react to the implied violence, the viewer stores the emotion. When the TV set or screen goes off, the suppressed emotion comes out, and uncontrolled behavior generally associated with childhood hyperactivity. The chart here shows the educational value of violent content shown on TV, which is 0%. The entertainment value is 60% for violent content, and the violent value is 110% increased by seeing the violent content. Interpretation. From the previous slide, you can conclude that the more children watch TV, the more impulsive and uncontrolled they can be, mainly due to the brain damage, which we now know is from the extensive amount of time spent on their device. So when the children start school, they'll be more aggressive and insensitive towards their peers. They will also act out more and have more behavior problems than children who use a recommended amount of screen time on their device. How sleep deprivation affects children. You may be wondering, how does this relate to children's lack of sleep caused by screen time? Well, from the chart, we can see that the sleep helps with information processing, memory coordination, and creativity, some of which being the main things needed to be successful in school. As most children don't get enough sleep, especially on school nights, it becomes harder for them to memorize things and become creative. The chart here shows the sleep cycle of children during their school ages. How sleep deprivation affects children continue. Continuing, the children who don't have enough sleep haven't given their body enough time to restore and replenish itself so it can prepare for the next day. We also can conclude that development is affected due to the lack of sleep. Children also have time to take away time to do their homework, chores, and things alike. This plus the time they spend on their devices decreases the amount of time they will have their sleeping. Conclusion. In conclusion, from the information stated in my research paper to this presentation, we conclude that screen time is horrible for them as well as their bodies. This really makes you reevaluate the amount of time you spend on your device. Now that we know just how bad too much screen time can be for you and some ways to fix the bad habits that come along with it, we can try to improve our relationship with screen time and fix our bad habits. These are the sources that I use for my presentation. Thank you for listening to my presentation, and do you have any questions?
Do you mind going back to, I don't remember the name of the slide, but can you back up maybe 3-4 slides? There was one you went through pretty quickly. You paused at the end of it though, for a moment. Keep going. Yes. Sleep deprivation effects. Nope, the one before. Yeah, that one. Uh-oh, is it moving by itself?
Oh, you want the chart?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, that one.
Oh, okay.
Great. Can you explain this one a bit more, the sleep cycle?
Okay, so there are 4, well, really 5 sleep. The first one being light sleep, the second one being also light sleep, and the third and fourth one being deep sleep, and the last stage being REM, rapid eye movement. During the second stage of sleep, information processing. The third and fourth stage of sleep, deep sleep, helps with growth hormones being produced to restore the body. And during REM, or rapid eye movement, we dream the most. It helps with memory, coordination, and creativity, and it restores the mind, enabling us to learn complex tasks. This is needed for children to continue their development, the development of their brain.
Dante, you're on mute. Oh.
Yeah, thank you. And in this study, you're saying one of the issues with too much screen time is it prevents you from getting into this deep level of sleep in which we all enjoy when we get there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
When the children wake up during that stage of sleep, they feel more groggy or groggy.
Right. Thank you.
I just
Any
see,
other questions?
thank you for the presentation. I had one or two quick questions too, in terms of, I think you were saying that the other problem was that it does cause some degree of violence and aggressive behavior.
Mhm. Yes, it does.
My question related to that is, do you have a sense in the research of how much influence that is, to what degree that is causes that in the person, independent of other factors that they're exposed to in the day? So I'm thinking of the person watching the screen versus what they also are seeing in other venues there in terms of influence of violence. So are you saying that one of the problems is that it is a predominant cause of the violence and aggressive behavior, or it's just one of the contributing factors? I want to make sure I was
It is
understanding.
sorry. It's
No,
one of the main reasons. Oh, you're still going.
I'm just saying, I just want to make sure I was clear on what the aspect of the problem you were saying as far as its contribution.
Yes, it's one of the main reasons why they act out in violence, because they see the violence they want to recreate in their real life.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And also how long a period duration wise do you find that the effect is there? So if I'm watching something for 15 minutes a day versus watching my 4 hours a day, is there any noticeable impact it has on a negligible amount of time that I'm exposed to screen watching, as far as the influence that it has? I did hear you say the correlation is there. Go ahead.
Yes, the less time that they watch the violent content, the less that they will act out on it, because they won't have as much stored emotion from seeing that content. But if they're watching it, like you said, for 4 hours, they have more stored emotion. They want to get it out somewhere, or they want to take it out on somebody.
Okay, and does it have to be over a sustained period of time? So if I'm watching just 1 week out of the year that I'm doing it, are you saying that there's impact there that's lasting, or it would have to be a sustainable period for the effect to be negative?
Well, this is on children, so usually every day they're watching TV, or at least most days out of the week they're watching TV. So the emotion, it will come back up each day that they watch TV. But to answer your question, if you watch it 1 week out of the entire year, the aggressiveness and violence, it will only be for a short period of time after you finish watching whatever you're watching.
Okay, so in answer to the question, you're saying that it is an impact regardless of the length of time, but it doesn't have to be sustainable. Okay, thank you.
So is there a recommended amount of time that we should allow the kids to watch? Is there a set time that you're recommending, that it be no more than or less than?
The times that we had to do online school is around 2 hours a day. But now that we have to do online school and do a lot of things online, I haven't heard a recommended time that children are supposed to stay online.
Okay.
So I can't just say then that online school is bad for my youngster.
No, because it's kind of mandatory for them to have some type of learning in their life, or while we have to do quarantine.
Well, mandatory things can be bad. They don't have to be good.
That is true.
I was just throwing that out there.
Mhm.
Dr. Bimley challenge.
Well, Dr. Bimley is relating to something I was also going to ask you in terms of the screen time. When you said screen time, because at school there's one screen time there, but in the home there's screen time of a different type there. It can be. So I didn't know if you were implying that the cumulative screen time between school and home is bad, period, or the content of what you're seeing in school, if it's relaxing, enjoying things at home versus more vigorous and violent things at school, would there be a difference in the impact?
Well, usually at school, they watch more of PG content, not things with a lot of violence, or either they play like online games that are, I guess, educational. But at home, it's based on their parents, what they allow them to do, whether they can allow them to watch gore movies or if they allow them to watch like things like Kokomo.
Okay, and typically that is true. The supervised portion of school, you're correct, but teaching in the DC schools, I've seen both. So I do understand what you're saying now.
But what we've gotten, the first part of the presentation talks about the fact that looking at a screen is passive.
Yeah.
And so that's sensory deprivation.
Mhm.
So that's saying that it doesn't matter what you're watching, it's sensory deprivation.
Yep.
And so what I was saying was that since you have to watch a screen at school, you know, that's sensory deprivation because that's passive. But let me give you
I
another
wouldn't say that's
scenario.
sensory deprived.
A lot of my classes are taught in classrooms that are actually classrooms / labs. And so students, when I'm giving a lecture, they're not listening to me. They're sitting there being passive because they're on the screen. They're looking at what's on the screen and what's on their phone.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just throwing these things out there for you to kind of consider in the next phase of your research.
Okay.
Any other questions from the judges for Miss Majesty?
No, this is very good because, I guess very seldom you're going to find kids or teenagers who are going to want to research the reasons why not to be stuck on their phones. My kid is trying to tell me why it's a good thing to be stuck on his phone 24 hours a day, no matter what he's doing. So, good job.
Majesty, you're helping people out here. All right, round of applause for Majesty.
Thank you, Majesty.
Thank you.
Her Majesty.
All right, we're going to move on to our next student, Mr. Javon Jennings. And Javon, after Dr. Bimley introduce you.
All right, here we have Javon Jennings, all the way from the space capital, the initial space capital of the country, Huntsville, Alabama. And he's 15, he's a rising junior in high school, and he's very interested in STEM, and he got that way when he went to the first robotics world championship in 2010, when he was just 4 years old. Think about that, 4 years old. He entered his first science fair in the 5th grade, and a number of the projects that he has worked on in these various competitions have been based on solar energy and robotics. And so the solar energy and robotics has been transformed into an interest in cybersecurity. And so he's interested in trying to combat ransomware. And so his first independent cybersecurity project has been looking at the use of virtual machines, and he's going to be talking about how he's using those virtual machines to help in mitigating the effects of this ransomware. And he's placed at the North Alabama Regional Science Fair, the Alabama State Science Fair, and the Alabama Junior Science Symposium. And so, Mr. Jennings, are you ready to share the results of your research?
Yes, I am, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Hello. As you guys heard, my name is Johan Jennings, and my project was on the use of simple virtual machines to protect host systems from ransomware attacks. So the purpose of my project was to find out if I could develop an easy to use virtual machine that could be used to contain ransomware attacks that would protect the host system you're using, and that it could be used for anybody working, students, faculty, people at jobs and things like that. And it would be used inside of their email to contain any attacks that would happen inside of an email. So every year in recent history, there have been roughly $45 billion in losses due to ransomware and other cyber attacks. And in my case, in a local school district that's around me, they experienced a ransomware attack in which 23,000 students ended up missing a week of school and having to go back to school with pen and paper when they had been using their computers for school since 2013. So this shows that not only can it happen to anyone, but when attacks do happen, they have impacts on people's lives. And so one of the most common ways attacks occur is through emails. It's reported that roughly 90% of all cyber attacks occur through email. So what is a ransomware attack? So a ransomware attack is an infectious software that works in one of two ways. The first is, I guess you could call it true ransomware, to where when it attacks your computer, it will encrypt all the files on the computer and then display a message telling you what's happened. And so the way to get it back in the way they make money is that you will have to send them some sort of payment in order to receive the code to unlock all of your software. And then the second type is sort of just a pop-up that will come up and will display the same sort of like ransom message saying the same things, but it won't actually encrypt your computer. But both of which could lead to you paying out money to get your files, everything you might need back off your computer. So now, what is a virtual machine? So a virtual machine is a virtual environment that operates on your computer, but as a separate entity. So it uses the host machine, and by host, I just mean like your regular laptop or like desktop computer. So it uses things like the CPU, memory, network interface, all that to power it, but it operates as a completely separate entity and there's no direct contact between the virtual machine and the host. So now, what's the difference between a virtual machine and a sandbox, and why did I choose it? So a sandbox is a sort of like temporary protective environment that is used to isolate single applications. So like, say you wanted to be able to re do an app in case something happened to it, you would use a sandbox. Whereas a virtual machine is a complete environment and can have lots of different functions. So the reason, even though all I was doing for email was for this project was creating somewhere to check your email, I decided to use a virtual machine because it would let you do more with it, such as opening things outside of your email. So now, why are ransomware attacks often successful? So here I have just a random sample email generated. So I'm going to give you a few seconds to see if you can sort of spot the things that would let you know that this isn't a legit email from ABC News. So I'll just give you a little bit of time to see if you can spot some things. All right, so here we go. Did you find it? So these are just a few like differences, such as like misspellings are the biggest indication of things that could potentially be ransomware attacks. But you can see these are just slight misspellings. And if you were just checking your email, you might not always be looking at every email, seeing if this is misspelled, if that's misspelled. So this is why they can be so successful, because it's really easy to miss small things that could lead to attacks. So the goal of my project was to create an environment in which you could check your email separate from your host machine. So in the event of an attack, the attack infects the virtual machine, but leaves your host system with all your files and everything unaffected. So what did I do? The first thing I did was I installed VMware Workstation Player, which is basically a desktop virtualization application. And so what it does is that it allocates the different space and things to the virtual machine. So I chose this because one, I find it really easy to use, and two, because I was familiar with it already. So it's for someone else to come in and use this first step is installing this is really easy. Next, I had to choose an image for the virtual machine. An image is basically like a base for it, so it's what it's built upon. So I decided to use the Windows 10 Enterprise image for VMware because even though it was a larger install, it would allow me to do more with it. So the next thing I did was I installed and set up the virtual machine. Most of the things I installed, I left it on default just because it'd be easier for people to go through it like that. But you can allocate things like space and all that stuff. So this is actually the first time I set it up and I got it working. So now that I have that there, how do you open the virtual machine? Well, once it's on here, it's really easy. So like say I want to check my email. The first thing I just do is click on the icon like I would anything else. And then I open the VM and then I'm into it now. So the last thing I did was I installed Firefox. I don't know what the local school system I was trying to imitate uses. So I used Firefox because it was just a base application for a web browser, but you can download any type of web browser on the virtual machine, Chrome, anything like that. So once I had this, I was able to set up and I got into my email and I was ready to begin testing. So the first test I did was to see if the virtual machine could send and receive email. So here is an email opened on the host machine that was sent from the virtual machine. And then on this slide, to the reverse, it's an email that was sent from the host to the virtual machine. So that let me know that even though the virtual machine was in its own environment, it could still send emails back and forth, which was its main purpose. And now the second thing I did was I ran a simulated attack on the virtual machine. So what I did was I used a pop-up that was similar to the what the second type of ransomware would be, that would pop up and display the message. And so as you can see here, even though it popped up and was on the virtual machine, I was still able to close out of it. And so in conclusion, I found that one, the virtual machine was easy to set up and would be accessible to other people. Two, that it was an isolate for even from the isolated environment, I could send and receive emails. And three, that it was useful in at least preventing the second of ransomware attack and possibly the first as well. Because even if everything is encrypted on the virtual machine, all you have there is your email and it was in a separate environment. So the future research I want to do is to see if I can get it to where you're able to open emails on your host machine inside an isolated environment so you don't have to go through the virtual machine. Thank you, and I can take any questions.
Siobhan, bring your presentation back up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can you talk
Mr.
a little bit
Jennings.
more? Okay, sorry.
Well, I was just gonna speak because none of my judges were ready, so go ahead.
No, can you just talk a little bit more about your future research on the second bullet point?
Yes, I can. So for while the virtual machines can be created, so what I wanted to do, because basically for my future research, what I want to do is that even though that this was relatively easy to set up, I want it to be as a whole more user friendly. So I wanted to create a method to where in the future, I want to create a method to where you can just go on functioning as your email as normal and you don't have to use it like as a completely separate application, I guess, but it would open up inside of a virtual environment on its own.
Okay.
So that's where I want to go in the future with this project.
Mhm.
It's a really great idea, right? If you could open, I don't know if this is what you're saying, but maybe so, but if you could not have to rely on a virtual machine per se, but more so say an email client was a self-contained virtual machine. When you open it, your emails kind of stay within the email environment within the system. And, unless you give some type of approval or access, then the emails, anything in the email that you click on won't infect your system.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's good. That's a really good idea. There are tons of encrypted email services and different things, but I'm not real sure what else is out there in terms of self-contained like email clients, right? That are doing what you would be attempting to do. You should look into it.
Can you talk to us a little bit about setting up this virtual machine using VMware Player? Because I'm just kind of concerned that if John Doe or Jane Doe, another student, does this, it may not be as easy for them as you say as you talk about how easy it is.
Okay, so I can go back to it. So basically for VMware, all you have to do is basically just install the app like you would any other app. And then you would download the image you have, and then basically you would just deploy the image inside of VMware Station. And then once you so basically all you have to do is open the image and then say to open it inside of VMware Workstation Player. And then you can basically just go on through everything else without changing any of the like specifics about it. So it's really only a few steps to install that. And then once it opens and everything, you can just go on using it.
Okay.
And so inside of the Windows Enterprise image, which is what I use, it's really similar to just having like a more basic version of like a regular Windows computer.
Okay, let's back up.
Okay,
Your host machine is network ready.
yes,
Because you've already made it network ready.
yes,
When you create your virtual machine, what you're doing there is just creating a machine. And then you put an operating system on that machine. And presto, you can start using it, right?
yes,
So now, everything that you did for your host machine, you have to do for your virtual machine in terms of making it network ready.
yeah. So
And
when
there are a lot of ways that can go wrong.
well, in the setup of it, because it was a Windows image that was pretty much made for VMware, it wasn't like a lot of like setup that you had to do inside of it. Like most of it was ready to go. So like now that like if I made a list of like all the applications you have to use for it, so where to download VMware, where to download the image, and then how to install Firefox on inside of your new virtual machine, then once you have all those, it's not a long process. Like
But
there aren't a lot of
what you're
places to
talking
get
about
lost
now,
inside of it.
what you're talking about are just the regular applications. What I'm talking about is setting up the communication configuration, which is different.
Yeah. So
Did you
for like
did
setting
you
that up, I did not have to like I didn't have to do any additional like networking or anything with like the virtual machine to get it to work.
okay, so your software then more than likely is going to be different from John Doe and Jane Doe software, because they are going to have to do that. They're
Well,
going to have to set up a lot more configuration than you did. If
well,
they used Hyper-V, then they probably wouldn't have to do that, because Hyper-V is a part of Windows 10 Pro, Enterprise, Data Center, etc. Got that?
yes.
Okay. And I want you to go back and I want you to do your experiments again. I want you to try Hyper-V.
Okay.
And send me an email and let me know what happened.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm done.
Thank you, Javon.
All right. Any other questions for our on his way to become an expert in ransomware?
Well, thank Javon for the presentation.
Okay.
Yeah, very impressive.
You may want to look up Bowie State University's Department of Technology and Security, which is where I am. This is the kind of thing that we do. And we go out and win a lot of cybersecurity competitions, all that kind of good stuff. And we're also a hop and a skip from NSA, which is National Security Association, and also the Department of Defense Cybersecurity Headquarters at Fort Meade, Maryland. So, you know, if you are really interested in this whole cybersecurity thing, you may want to consider us.
Okay, I'll look into it.
And just, you know, drop me a line and we'll see what we can do.
Yes, sir.
I don't know how Mr. Neely gonna feel about that, but okay. The coordinator in Huntsville, they want to keep their homegrown talent.
I
hear him.
I can understand that.
I hear him.
But one of the things that I'm always looking for is I want a young man or a young lady, especially ours, to not have to worry and fret over who wants them. I want their biggest decisions as they graduate from high school. I want to put so much pressure on them to be wondering about who do I want? Because all these people want me, so who do I want? Those are the kind of decisions I want to see them making.
All right, Mr. Neely, challenge is on you to get the talent now. Okay. Pressure. All right, thank you so much, Javon. And our next presenter is Mr. Mbe. Mr. Mbe, are you ready? He's going to be speaking
Yes,
to
I'm
us on
ready.
the brain and the natural computer. Dr. Bimley will intro you. You may share your screen.
All right. Here we have Muhammadu is an upcoming senior. It means a rising senior at Anoka High School in Minnesota. And his favorite subjects are math and science, especially biology on the scientific side. And he plays a number of sports for his school, and chief among those are football, wrestling, and track. And which that shows me that he has as much upper body strength as he has lower body strength. And so he loves to travel with his family, and his love for the brain has driven him to want to explore all aspects of the brain. See, these kind of people scare me. So, Muhammadu, are you ready to share what havoc you want to wreak on brains with the judges here?
Yes. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Muhammadu Mbai. I'm from Minnesota, and I go to Anoka High School. Today, I will be talking about the brain and the natural computer. For the agenda, first, we're going to have an introduction. Then, within the next slides, we'll talk about the technology within neurosurgery. And after the brain chip concept and what is a stroke, futuristic brain chip, and lastly, my brain chip concept. All right. First and foremost, neurosurgery is a medical specialty, which is a specified surgeon
who is concerned with prevention, diagnostics, treatment, and rehabilitation. They mainly focus on peripheral nerves, spinal cord, and the brain. Uh, since this is a hard profession, there are only 3,689 neurosurgeons in the world. All right, within the past years, technology has emerged. For example, with the upcoming of use of technology as computers and phones and Wi-Fi, neurosurgeons have incorporated that within their practice. For example, they have used 3D imaging as seen in this picture. The virtual reality models are created by volume rendering 2D CT scans. And these help the neurosurgeons find the contusion and be able to specifically find the contusion without creating as much damage to the skin. Secondly, there's also 3D printing. As seen right here in the image, there's a contusion that has been printed out. And this helps surgeons create minimally invasive surgeries. And this helps so the recovery process is easier and the pain for the patient is less. The brain chip concept. The brain chip concept is a chip that's going to be implanted inside the brain to help enhance certain abilities or enhance certain parts of the brain for people who have disabilities or for people who have mental disabilities or mental disorders. As seen in the picture, this is called the deep brain stimulation. So this is the current form of the brain chip right now. It's like the pacemaker with a wire connecting from the limbic system all the way down to chest area. And these are electrodes that regulate subnormal impulses with electrical impulses. And this helps with a lot of different mental disorders. For example, epilepsy, obsessive compulsive disorder, Parkinson's disease, and many more. What is a stroke? A stroke occurs when parts of the brain are deprived of oxygen, and this causes the side of the brain to shut down, and the opposite side of that part of the body will become paralyzed. And this happens in mostly older males and females. All right, the futuristic brain chip. One of the most prestigious engineers in the world, Elon Musk, is also working on brain chip, and he's calling it the Neuralink. For him, he is trying to use the brain chip to create telepathy, or in other words, to have communications with humans on a higher level. And he is trying to implant this device by a surgical robot instead of actual surgeons. The reason why he's doing this is because bacteria and viruses can travel through surgeons while they're performing the surgeries. Even though it's 100% sanitary, that sometimes bacteria can get into the surgery. So with the surgical robot, he can implant brain chips with less cuts and less incisions and more sanitary. Finally, in conclusion, my brain chip concept. The brain chip will revolutionize medicine and will help prevent many casualties caused by different health conditions. With this type of technology, we can track the brain and track its activity to prevent strokes and to help cure strokes. For example, the pacemaker now, it tracks the heart, the way the heart is moving and the way the heart is reacting to certain situations. And it sends it directly to the hospital. For example, if people who have heart conditions or had heart attacks before, the pacemaker can track that. And I am trying to do the same thing with the brain to help cure and prevent stroke. In conclusion, new technology such as 3D printing and virtual reality has helped neurosurgeons, and technology continues to increase rapidly. And thank you. Is there any questions?
Go back to your concept. Will you plan to do yours?
With my concept, I'm planning to use the brain chip to help prevent and prevent stroke.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'm assuming what the chip is doing is it'll be consistently monitoring what's going on with your brain signals, and if there's anything that looks like a spike in activity or change, that would alert, or how would it prevent the stroke from happening?
So with strokes, you can test between the amount of oxygen or amount of blood supply that is going to the brain, that part of the brain. So it will track that activity, and if the chip is noticing that if the chip is reading that the brain is having a lack of oxygen or a lack of blood supply going to the brain, it will send an alert to the hospital or send an alert to your phone.
So it's really more of a detective device than a preventative.
Also, it could prevent it because because strokes it develops over time. For example, it's not like something that happens suddenly. It develops because of weeks or months of lack of oxygen supply. So it can prevent it by weeks in advance.
Cool.
Any more questions?
Another one, since no one has said anything yet. When you compare this against the deep stimulator that's already in use,
yes. Yes, it's in use, but it's only been tested in only a couple of people, and it's mainly been used in animals. So it's still a concept. It's not like many people aren't willing to implant something in their brain.
True. Yeah, the thing, like, how would you get over that hurdle to make this people want to put this in their brain? Because stroke is, well, I know there are some people who are prone to them, but to get people to really want to use this, I guess you got to really hype up the benefit of it.
Yeah. Because stroke, like, not a lot of people recover after stroke. For example, many elderly, after they have a stroke, they become bedridden and mainly bedridden and have to endure the rest of their life in a bed.
Mm.
I think maybe you should do a little bit more research on that part.
All right.
A lot of people survive strokes. They may not be 100% afterwards, but a lot of people are surviving strokes now.
Yeah, they survive it, but they become bedridden, so it affects their abilities to do certain things.
And that doesn't make them vegetative, though.
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
So in your research, did you come across any other devices comparable, not compare, I guess, well, alternative to your brain chip concept that could help to track and monitor for symptoms of a potential stroke?
Um, well, oxygen receptors, for example, like in other parts of the body, but all in all, there's not really things that track it. Otherwise, they track with MRI scans and stuff like that.
Okay.
Any other questions from the judges? All right, round of applause. Thank you.
Thank
All
you
right,
very much, there.
Great research.
Thank you, Mamadou.
All right, thank you for listening.
All right, so our next student, our final student is Mr. Mordecai. And Dr. Bimley will be introducing him. And while Mordecai brings his presentation to the screen.
Mordecai is a graduate of Parkdale High School in Prince George's County here in DC. And he is originally from Nigeria. He's been in the States for 5 years. And in high school, he's played varsity soccer and tennis. And he was a peer forward. And that's an organization, that's a nonprofit organization here in the DC area. And he will be attending Washington University in St. Louis. And his major will be electrical engineering. And Washington University is one of our premier universities in the US. So, Mordecai, are you ready to share your research?
Yes, hi. Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, we
Yeah.
can. Perfect.
Okay. Good afternoon once again. My name is Mordecai Etepemi. Thank you to Dr. Bemley for the introductions. And today I will be sharing my presentation on the project on access points. Yes, so we have a little agenda that we'll follow. So we have our introduction, then we have the steps, explaining Raspberry Pi, understanding our configurations, understanding our executions, and then we have questions at the end. So we'll go with understanding what an access point is. Simple definition, an access point makes wireless local area network from a wired network, that is your Ethernet cable. What an access point does is it creates Wi-Fi from a cable network. So for instance, if you don't have access to Wi-Fi, maybe in an office, in a shop, or in your home, and you have the Ethernet cable connected to the source, you could use an access point to create a wireless network that you can use for your phones, your laptop, and multiple devices. So moving on, step one, research. So this was when I had to go search, understand what our access point was, understand what system that we were using, and also understanding the steps that I would take into moving on into the project. So step two, my analysis of research. The software that we had to use, the system, is Raspberry Pi. The Raspberry Pi is the device itself, but since we weren't using Raspberry Pi exactly, we had to use the operating system of Raspberry Pi to simulate the same process and interaction using software called RASPN. So to begin the creating of our access point, the first step is to make sure that we have RASPN installed and updated. Then we move on to setting up some basic network interfaces, host APD and DNS mask. Then we move on to setting up our IP addresses, our DHCP servers, setting up our network traffic, and enabling our internet connection, and then we'll be good to go. Moving on to the next one, installing and updating Raspberry. So this makes this the line of code that will run is to basically ensure that we are running the updated and upgraded version of Raspbian. And the code we run to get our update is sudo apt get update. And to install that update, we use sudo apt get upgrade. Said this test must be done every time to ensure smooth running. So every time you want to set up the access point, you always have to do this to make sure that you're up to date and there are no bugs or fixes that need to be done. Then we move on to setting up our host APD and DNS mask. So these programs enable us to turn our Raspberry Pi into an access point. So they act as network interfaces and also authentication server. That's host APD, host access point daemon. And then DNS mask configures the DHCP server for us. So it's intended for small computer networks, and it creates a small DHCP server that we can use to connect our access point to the internet. And to do that, we run the code sudo apt-get install host APD and sudo apt-get install DNS mask. Now we have to configure our IP addresses. Now for us to run this access point, we have to use a static IP address. So a static IP address means that IP address does not change. So there's another type of IP address that's dynamic. So a dynamic IP address means that every time you're connected, the IP address constantly changes. And we do not want that for our access point. So it's easier to recognize and it's easier to connect. So we're using a static IP address. Then we'll move on to opening a text editor to be able to configure our IP address. And the code we'll run is sudo nano /edc/dhcpcd.conf. That line of code will go deeper into what some parts of that code mean, and that will help everyone to understand why it's configured that way. So once we type in that line of code, we'll move on into setting up our interfaces and IP address. Those are the 4 lines of code that are right below under code and text editor. Now, these are the keywords to know so we can better understand the lines of code. The nano command, that's the command that's used as a text editor in Linux. So if you want to type a line of code in a configuration file, or if you want to type a text in the code. The etc is a folder which contains all your system configuration files in it. That's where all your files are stored, all your configuration files are stored. So if you want to access any configuration files, you would have to use the line of code etc. And the last one is an example of when we want to configure a new file. So this example is a DHCP configuration file. So we say dhcp.conf, and that opens a new file to configure DHCP. Now we move on to configuring our DHCP server. So our DHCP server is to distribute the network configuration parameters. And now we move on to the next part, the configuration code. Now to configure our DHCP server, we have to run the line of code sudo /edc/DNS mask.conf. Once we open the configuration file, we can type in this line of code, that's the interface equals WLAN 0. And then we have to set our DHCP range. So that range is the range of IP addresses that we could connect within. So when we connect, we want the IP address to be within that range. And the range I have here as an example is 192.168 and so on, and 255.255 and so on. As we see in the previous line of code, we see a line called NV. So NV is short for move. That's to move one file or directories and put in a different location. Now we'll have to set up host APD. To configure host APD, we run the same code, sudo nano /etc/host APD .host APD.conf. And this is what we include into our host APD configuration file. Now, this is a really long line of code, but there are some really important paths that we need to identify. And that's the SSID and our WPA passphrase. So what this ensures for our system is to make sure that our system has a name and our system has security. The SSID is the name and the WPA passphrase is the password for the system to connect to. Now we have to set up our forward traffic. So this enables traffic to be forwarded over an Ethernet cable. To configure this, we run sudo nano /edc/sysctl.conf. And inside that line of code, we use the hashtag. So the hashtag is used to create a comment. So if you're programming or if you're in a couple lines of code and you want to make a comment, say you want to make a note about some line of code that you want to remember in the future, use hashtag to make that note. Once we type in that configuration code, we'll see a bunch of lines of code come out. And we want to search for this one, hashtag net the IPv4 and so on. And when we get there, we have to delete the hashtag. So once we delete that hashtag, it enables us to be able to forward traffic. And that's the important line of code that we need to find. And then we need to activate. Then we have to add new IP tables. Now we add new IP tables. So the IP tables, this enables us to masquerade the IP address for outbound traffic. And this is just a security measure to make sure that our IP address is secure. We run our initiation code, then we save the code, and then we load the code again. IP tables is a command line firewall utility that uses policy chains to allow or block traffic. And that's just a security measure to make sure that the network traffic that is being sent and that is being received doesn't contain, doesn't let our system be polluted by viruses or any other outside influences. Now we enable our internet connection. And to enable internet connection, we need to create a bridge. And that bridge is what allows traffic to pass from our wireless network to our Ethernet network and vice versa. And to do that, we have to run our code sudo apt-get install bridge-utils. Once we run that, we will add the following lines of code to connect our bridge to our Ethernet and our Ethernet to our wireless. And once we activate our internet connection, we then move on to the last step, which is rebooting the machine. So once we reboot the machine, we turn it on, and then we can check our connection. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Give them a moment to collect their thoughts.
That's the question. Why would I want to go this route versus investing in wireless for my area? Like, what are the pros and cons and differences between just installing a wireless network?
The pros and cons. Naturally, it depends on what you have available. And this option is relatively cheaper than getting a wireless network. Although there are some different pros and cons that you need to weigh in when you want to make such decisions. And the access point is mainly as a contingency plan. say your Wi-Fi gets disconnected, but you have internet connection. You at that point, you have this access point to make sure that you are still staying connected and you have that second option, especially in a place where it's harder to get Wi-Fi, but you still have that cable connection.
Okay. Okay.
Mordecai, thank you for the presentation. Is there any advantage of having more than one access points in the settings where it is appropriate? I think you had mentioned earlier that it's for the not necessarily the large building complexes, but in certain areas where it would be advantageous to have the access point available. Are there any times when it's more advantageous to have more than one access point in the settings?
Yes. So like I said before, it works mainly in small rooms. It's advantageous when instead of having a central Wi-Fi, for example, you're in a home and you have a Wi-Fi router and it's placed, let's say, in the living room, right? And there are multiple bedrooms in the house. So some bedrooms might have a stronger Wi-Fi connection than others. And instead of going for a more expensive option of getting a Wi-Fi extender, you could have the access point plugged into an internet connection from the room that's still connected to your router. And then the signal will be stronger in the room, and you won't have to worry about just connecting, say, your laptop directly to the Ethernet cable. The access point can now supply ample internet connection to multiple devices in that same small room. So the only disadvantage with the access point is it wouldn't be able to cover a large area, and that's all about it.
And is that in general, just in terms of range wise, we're talking about access pointers in within a certain number of feet or something, as opposed to a whole house or something like that? Is it more applicable within one or two room areas? I mean, I know the room sizes vary and houses vary, but I guess I'm getting at, are we talking somewhere 15, 20 feet or 50 feet or 100 feet in terms of the applicability of access points?
The access point. That goes both ways between your device and the access point. Now, the access point may not be able to get 100 feet. I haven't done much research about the distance, but I do believe that as a simple Wi-Fi provider, it will be able to cover up to at least 50 feet.
Okay.
And devices that are being made nowadays, the newer ones, have much improved technology that enables it to cover more distances at a higher connection rate.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mordecai, you really need to look at more than just distance. You also need to look at construction. What's between the access point and the device that's going to be receiving the signal? And if you got a big house and that house is one that has substantial walls, in those kind of situations where you need access points more so than distance per se, because the signal has to go through all of those obstructions between the access point and the device that's trying to receive the signal. So that 100 feet just has to do with Ethernet capability in terms of the degradation of a signal over an Ethernet cable.
Mhm. Um, Mordecai, hey, I just also just want to add that your theory of access points in your presentation is good, but one of the things, I work with the government, and in building off what everyone says, we actually have access points for wireless because we're in an older building and the walls are thick. So we have to have access points so that if someone unplugs or undocks their station, they're still connected to a secure network. So, and then the access points also help that we don't have other people connecting to our agency's network. Because imagine a building with a lot of different companies. So that also allows us to have a secure wireless when it's needed. So.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So it can actually, if they're placed right, at times they can cover more than 100 feet. But you have to have more access points.
So, sorry, Mordecai, what do you intend to study at Washington University? I'm sorry, is Washington University or?
Yes, it is. I intend to study electrical engineering.
Electrical engineering, oh, great, okay. Yeah, I mean, I see you have a knack for coding, at least because, you know, not many people would be open to doing what you're doing in terms of this presentation, walking through the configurations and such. So that's definitely a good thing. I mean, I can tell you, watching you present, and you were not reading word for word your presentation. So I understand you know the content. So that's a good thing. So good luck.
And Mordecai, I was going to say too, it was a very good presentation, and Washington University is, I was going to say, I wish you well there. That's my home city, and that's a school I studied at one point. So you will be very, very well centered there in terms of being able to continue your research in good stead there. So I wish you well.
All right, thank you.
All right, so Mordecai, while we were in our practicing session, you mentioned that you had some hands-on experience with this. Is that correct?
Yes, I did. I did attempt to create an access point in my home using the Raspberry software in my laptop.
And how was your experience?
It was a really challenging experience for me because I had to go through multiple resources, multiple codes, different codes, try to see which ones I could try to merge, which ones would make it better, which ones would make it improve. But at the end, I was able to create one that was successful. It worked for a short while, and then I think I tried to modify it again, and I messed it up. But I really loved the learning experience that I got from trying to make one.
Tell them what made the experience even more challenging.
What made it more challenging was, for me, it was not having the Raspberry Pi itself. That's what made it challenging because most of the research that was being shown and what I was seeing was created based on having the Raspberry Pi right there. But what we had to do was we had to use the virtualization on the laptops to create that interface so we could use the operating system on the Raspberry Pi, that's Raspbian. And sometimes it was just the experience was just shaky, and for me that was the hardest part.
All right, any other questions for Mordecai from the judges? All right, let's give him a round of applause. Thank you so much, Mordecai.
Thank you all for having me.
Yeah,
All right.
keep up the good work, Mordecai.
We'll see you next
Yeah,
year
we
as
do.
a college student.
Yep.
Okay?
Okay.
And I'll
Don't
look for
see
you.
you
Getting
too.
away from us.
And I'll look for you in St. Louis when I'm there.
Apply for some,
I'll
apply
be
for
with
some of
you.
that scholarship money.
That's right. Okay, so we're not done yet. We're not done yet. We are honored to have one of our co-sponsors here today, Mr. Jillian Jones from Lilly, and he would like to give a short presentation to us and to the students. Most importantly, listen up.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Janice. And good afternoon, everyone. And students, congratulations on your presentation during the IT showcase. And on behalf of Lilly, thank you for everything you're doing. And definitely from what I've seen, just watching Mordecai as well as watching previous IT showcases, our pipeline of talent is definitely rich. So looking forward to you all watching you guys aspire and matriculate through your collegiate careers, as well as those of you still in high school, watching your progress as you continue to participate in the in the IT showcases. So that being said, let me tell you a little bit about Lilly, if you don't mind. So I'll share a quick quote that we use from our founder, which says, take what you find here and make it better. And those were the words of our founder, Colonel Eli Lilly, 144 years ago. So why do I say those words? Because if you think about it from a technology standpoint, technology already exists. And really what we're doing as technologists is taking what we either already have the ability to put our hands on or use in our day-to-day experiences, and we're making it better. So a lot of the presentations that you guys do in the IT showcases is a lot of innovation and taking a lot of things that we already have in place and making it better. So at Lilly, the molecules that we discover are only our only asset. It's also our people. Lilly has received the Catalyst Award for our innovative employee journeys, which delved into the African American journey, Asian Pacific journey, as well as the LGBTQ plus journeys as well. We've also received awards for being number 3 on America's Best Large Employers list. And finally, we're number 3 in Diversity Inc.'s top 50 companies for diversity. IT plays a big role empowering the innovation and information throughout our company. As an IT manager for Eli Lilly, one of the goals of us being here is not only to be a co-sponsor of this event, but it's also to get a preview of the talent that will be coming through the pipeline. So that being said, when each of you reach your sophomore or junior status at the collegiate level and continue to demonstrate your innovative prowess, accompanied with strong academic backgrounds, please make sure to connect with Lilly for an internship opportunities and join Team Lilly to contribute to helping people live longer, healthier, and more active lives. And we are a staple here at the BDPA conferences. If you got a preview of it from a keynote speaker when Tim Coleman kicked us off this morning, Tim, as well as our national president, Terry Morris, both Eli Lilly and Company employees, they are great representation for us. So those two aren't the only ones that are involved. We have a whole delegation of Lilly employees who have gone to the conference before, and some of them this is their first time at the conference as well. So as I mentioned, as you matriculate throughout your academic career and continue to not only participate in the IT showcases, but also participate in the diversity of career fairs when you reach your junior and or sophomore academic careers, definitely look out for the red shirts and come talk to us, because we would love for you to be a part of Team Lilly and continue to help us make medicines and make people, give the ability for people to live longer and healthier lives. So Janice, with that being said, I'll end with hoping everyone enjoys the remainder of the BDPA conference experience, and I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you so much, Julian. We appreciate you coming on year after year.
Yes,
and
ma'am.
now we're going to give our other sponsor opportunity to learn, for you guys to learn a little bit about J&J and some opportunities they have as students. Miss Connie.
Yes. Echo the words of my partner here from Lilly. We saw some amazing talent today, and we would also really love to have you on board at J&J when the time is right. We offer not just internships, but also co-ops. So depending in that are not just necessarily school dependent. So if you are interested in any of those types of opportunities, we have those available as well. We constantly are putting out our schedules for recruitment. We are opening up for next year, for next summer already. So if you go out to our careers.jnj.com, for those who are, you have to at least be a college student. You can be finishing your freshman year going into your sophomore year. We do open that up to interns as well as co-ops. So don't forget about us. We have a really good history. We have locations around the world and around the country. We have plenty of opportunities between our 3 different sectors that we have, between consumer products, medical device products, and pharmaceutical. There is a gamut of opportunities in IT, outside of IT as well, that we would love to have you engaged in. So at the booth, come talk to J&J. We will be there. Maybe you'll even talk to me or some of my other colleagues.
And that's the virtual booth that's actually set up through the conference. And I believe students, you don't need to be registered for that. So especially those who are college bound. And then we also want to encourage the students who are juniors. I mean, you really need to start thinking about that as well. You might want to jump in the career booth too. Sometimes they will talk to students just to let them know if you're serious, what they have to offer for you in the future, as Mr. Jones and Ms. Connie just mentioned. So, and definitely you must come back with us next year, because let me tell you, J&J and Lilly, they have first dibs of the IT showcase. And I'm not kidding, right, Julian, right?
That's right. That's right. You guys have great talent here, so we love the relationship that we have with you guys. So, encourage all the students, keep participating in the showcase.
And right, Connie, because Connie knows that
Absolutely.
too, because they offered us scholarship dollars as well as Lilly.
And some of you we will be tracking.
All right.
We'll be
Listen,
tracking you.
You see how our judges, they're in it for the right reason. This is Dr. Bimley's dream. They want to fight for you. So, I'm also open the floor up to any of our other judges. We know you're not sponsors, but if you know of any opportunities as well, you want to encourage the students, you can as well. So if you have internships or anything of that nature, just let us know. Not to put you on the spot here, but just let us know. But, okay, so we want to definitely thank our corporate sponsors. I will have to say, not only do they give us corporate dollars, but they literally give their time to us. And that's what makes IT Showcase so special. So we really appreciate that. Now, before we close, I want Dr. Bimley to say some words to the students. Well, first, let me do this. So students, tomorrow, don't forget we have our poster board session. Is open to the public. If we were in a physical location, you'll have all the adults wandering through the hallways, looking at your presentations, and they will ask you questions. We're going to simulate that whole process tomorrow, starting at 10 o'clock. And then so it's going to be open to the whole conference team people. And so make sure, I'm sure you'll be with us. So yeah, so that'll be it. So I'm going to let Dr. Bimley, let me thank you guys so much for all your hard work. It paid off. I can tell you that. You did so great. And I'm so proud of you. That's all I can say. I can't stop smiling. Dr. Bimley, close us out.
Let me just tell you, everybody, judges, students, about a little town in Georgia right there on the whatever that highway is that runs from Atlanta all the way over to the Alabama border. This town is called Noonan, Georgia. And I noticed my judges asking current questions about some of the technology, especially Raspberry Pi. You know, why would you use this? Well, you know, that kind of thing. When we have, why would you use an SBC when we have technology that's been specially manufactured to do and be access points? Well, it's been about 15 years ago, Noonan, Georgia was upgrading its communication system. That's data, phone, and putting all that on fiber. And but the company that did this for them was a Black-owned company. And what they did was they didn't buy routers. Routers cost a lot of money to do what they needed it to do. So what did they do? They had a group of teenagers over the summer who collected from schools and companies old desktops. And so they created routers using those old desktops. And each one of those desktops, all it had to do was to route. And they pretty much got the equipment for free, which allowed that city then to have that old technology doing something new. And what we see now is everybody wants the latest and greatest. Everybody wants the latest and greatest. We have a lot of instances in our community where people don't have computers. They don't have the money to buy them. But then we have other people that's throwing them in the trash can because they're not the latest and the greatest. We could take those old machines, throw Linux on them, and open office and have a desktop that can practically do everything that a Windows desktop can do with the latest software on it. But not a lot of people are thinking about that, and so it's not being done. My son is one of those latest and greatest people. But in order to be latest and greatest, you got to have latest and greatest dollars. Whereas with this old hardware and this free operating system and this free software out there, it doesn't matter what you want to do. There's some open source software out there that can do it just as well as the high price software that we're using in the latest and greatest technology. And think about that now. And this city is still using those DOS-based machines as routers. And their information infrastructure is still chugging right along. Still chugging right along. And so if anybody wants to know how to make good use of excess equipment, just send me an email. And I can help connect you with some people that know how to do that. And for our judges, you guys are super. You are really super. Connie, what kind of chair is that you have?
Listen.
And I'm asking that because, you know, sometimes, you know, I've had cataract surgery in both eyes, so, you know, I kind of have to question things. I may not be seeing what I think I'm seeing.
This is not my background. This is just a background of a corporate headquarters lobby. This is the lobby at work.
So that's what makes you look like you having such a good time.
Probably.
Bouncing up and down. I need that. But I need to be bouncing up and down for real.
It's probably how I have my laptop strategically on my lap.
And I'm happy to have Mr. Neely here. Does everybody here know Mr. Neely?
No, I don't know if I've met Mr. Neely.
Mr. Neely, would you please introduce yourself?
Good afternoon.
And then I'm gonna smack you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mr. Neely. I'm a retired cybersecurity, I guess, analyst for the federal government, and I work with the Huntsville chapter, BDPA chapter. I used to be the director of sites, but now I'm the training coordinator, and my passion is teaching and working with different, working with the Raspberry Pi 4 and the 400. And so I'm retired now, and I'm just learning to just enjoy doing some of the things that I've always wanted to do. But I just recently completed for Drake Tech College here locally, just taught a STEM camp, teaching kids how to design games, a text-based game in Python. I just finished a robotics camp for a local church here. So I get involved with teaching a lot of STEM activities across Northern Alabama, Huntsville, area. And so I'm heavily into IT. I'm getting ready to start my graduate studies in STEM education in about 2 weeks. So that's Mr. Neely.
Mr. Neely, we are just so glad to have you. So I guess I won't smack you too much because you're going to be involved in graduate study, and I'm going to be wanting you to identify some students to participate in a conference that's going to be in Africa next year, but they got to start working on that now.
I would love to do that, Dr. Bimley. I wanted my one student, Miles Douglas, to present that DNA sequencer to this showcase. And but his school activities, got, took first, priority. And right now, Hudson Alpha Institute of Biotech want us to demonstrate that Raspberry Pi. They're using supercomputers to look at the DNA structure of plants, animals, and humans, but we're using the Raspberry Pi 400. So, you know, this was a project I had sitting on my workbench for about 3 years now. And I wanted my Miles Douglas to present it because I know he was a good presenter. And maybe next year. But those are some of the things that I do with the boys here locally in Huntsville and surrounding. But that Raspberry Pi has many use. And Earl Pace, Mr. Earl Pace, told me to continue to do what I'm doing with those Raspberry Pis. And I've been running with it. I've been running with those Raspberry Pis.
We're using them here in DC too. In fact, what you're doing is good, because if people want to set up a lab, they buy a bunch of pies, hook them up together, and for $500, they got a whole lab. Communications and everything.
Yes.
And they can do everything with that little lab that you could do with a lab that has Windows workstations.
Exactly right. You're exactly right.
And so there is no reason for us to be behind. I mean, we can't do a lot of the high-powered number crunching that they're doing, but when you're talking about teaching concepts to young people,
yes,
we're doing intelligent technologies and high-performance computing, those kinds of things. We have a cluster. I'm talking about not a Raspberry Pi cluster. We got a real cluster up here. But what we're doing is we are configuring one side of our lab with Raspberry Pis so that those machines can simulate a cluster.
Well, you can build a Raspberry Pi cluster. I was in the process of building one 3 years ago. I just haven't finished it. Sitting on my workbench right now.
Okay, well, we got one. We got one of them too.
Okay.
So Dr. Bimley, let's, if we can introduce our other coordinator, Will, because Will also teaches STEM. So Will, you want to talk about your organization, STEM, and that's how he recruit his students, and partnering with BDPA and, you know, a BDPA volunteer, voluntold.
Hey, how you doing? Thanks. Thank you guys for, I really learned a lot, and I'm so in awe with the students and all of the projects that they presented and the research. So it was a really, really good day of learning and listening and just, again, being in awe of the ideas. And I understand the time that it takes to get these things up and the drive that the students have. So, you know, this was an excellent day. You know, just can't say thank you guys enough. My organization is called Steam Sport. So we operate here in Atlanta, and I actually got a chance to actually talk to Mr. Neely. So I want to say a couple of times, because through our connection with Jason over at the Huntsville chapter. So, you know, I had that a conversation and really blown away about his, you know, depth of knowledge and everything that he's doing with those students. So, you know, again, this is great. So just a little bit about us. We provide the STEM stuff, and our focus is specifically for kids that live in underserved communities. So we do a lot of partnership with the Department of Housing and Urban Development in their STEM innovation network, and just going around the country and looking at how does STEM and STEAM learning look for students that live in underserved communities from the community side. So, you know, just my excuse me, my time with BDPA has been really, really helpful. Really helps me learn a lot that we're able to really just project out there. So again, thank you guys. Great day today.
Welcome to this group.
Thank you, Will. And I can't leave Kelly out. Kelly is a first-time coordinator from Twin Cities. And she's been great at trying to recruit and try to hold on to those students for us to participate. So Kelly, you just want to say hello and just give a little bit of background about yourself.
Yeah, hi, thank you so much. From the Minneapolis chapter, there's 2 chapters in Minnesota. So I'm actually the Twin Cities chapter. Sorry about that. And yeah, I have been involved as a coordinator for a while, but not in the IT showcase. So so we've been, experimenting, and thank you, Janice, for holding our hand and answering all the questions. But basically we focus on more of the high school computer competition, the HSCP program. And yeah, so I've been involved for, quite a while now, but we do have a program, and this is specifically for the web design, web development part of it, but we do want to expand a little farther into some of the other things that BDPA has to offer. So again, I thank you so much for allowing us to be a part of this IT showcase, and for my young guy to do his thing.
Very good. We're gonna hold on to you.
Okay.
Don't let HSCC and the other folks in the mobile apps get in your way. Stay with us.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Janice?
Yes, sir.
I had a question as I'm listening to the folks there. I wanted to ask, my company's been involved the last several years in doing the development of STEAM training and workforce development in the local area, developing a model of how community engaged support can be engendered in terms of addressing particularly the young persons there. We've been working mostly, as I mentioned earlier, in the incarcerated community for marginalized persons there. My question is, with BDPA, is there any possibility of looking at that, maybe doing some connection with how we are constructing it so that it can be, because it's a unique approach we're using in the prison system in terms of those who are being released and reentry into society to cut that recidivism rate. And so we have begun working here in Northern Virginia over the last several years, and we're developing it so it can be a model that eventually in the DMV area and nationally, we can also do it too. So I didn't know if there may be some possibility of discussing how we can connect with others who may have similar interests in with that.
So Dr. Bimley, definitely could bring this up to National's attention when we have a follow-up meeting and make them aware of. I probably should speak to you a little bit more too, Sam, just to understand a little bit more, just to have a
if I can tell you more
conversation, and then bring it to the attention of National. And that would definitely be a different type of outreach. And this, who knows, there's probably some of that going on right now. We just don't hear about it. So Dr. Bimley, do you have any feedback for that?
Well, that's the kind of thing that you would bring up in a board meeting that for forming a relationship, a partnership.
Correct.
Okay.
And you may want to put together a proposal or something.
Yeah, because some of the proposals here in the local institutions and banks and insurance companies are beginning to support us here. But I didn't know in terms of in the network across the country if there are others like to extend BDPA that may have some either similar activity, because I always believe in connecting with others out there. But since this is a unique model that we're developing and recreating, just wanted to make sure I wasn't overlooking some of the things within BDPA. I can certainly work within our here we are here with Perry with some of the things we're doing. But I did want to just inquire across the country the best way to look at that.
Yeah,
Well,
I
then-
will check. Go ahead, Dr. Bill.
If a proposal or, you know, something like that was presented at a national board meeting, then, you know.
That's probably would be the formal step to.
Right.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay. All right. Then I'll follow up with you and
Okay.
Perry and look at that. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you much.
I'll contact Mr. Perry since he's Mr. Perry is everything. So
Yeah, Mr. Perry's everything. He and I, we're we work.
he's everything. He said, no, I'm not. Yes, you are.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is there. So, all right then. Thank you.
Okay.
And
So Dr. Bill, are we finished? Officially finished?
Yeah, we're done. This is it for the 2021 IT Showcase. We've had another success, judging from the comments that you guys have given us and the feedback you've given us. So I'm just, I'm always happy at the end. Always happy at the end. But
Yes.
Another
And,
success. Janice, you've taken us through once more.
We did. We got another one. Check.
That's it.
And again, want to thank our judges. You guys have been really great. And just like how we like to retain students, we like to retain our judges too. Connie going for year 3 next year in 2022. Who wants to join her and be an alumni? Come on.
Exactly. Come on, people. Come on.
Come on, be an alumni next year.
Nothing
with
like
us.
nothing like a BDPA judge, right?
That's right. That's right. At IT Showcase, BDPA.
That's why IT Showcase. Now, what link should we be using for tomorrow for joining with the tomorrow morning?
Yes, I'll send you out a couple of links after the email. You'll
Okay.
have one to attend. It's just again the Zoom, if you like, open presentation, poster boards. It'll be open discussion from
Okay.
10 until 12 Eastern time, and then I will send everyone a link for the awards ceremony that will be on Saturday, starting at 2 o'clock to 3:30. Now, let me tell you, last year's virtual award ceremony, it was really, really good. This year, not only the presenters and our sponsors, but also they had entertainment. We actually had, it was a jazz group. I think it was called Peanut Butter and Jelly last year. And so this time they're having a comedian, and they're also having another entertainer, a singing group as well. So if you can join us, that'll be great. It goes really, really fast because we're really timed for everything. So I will send that invitation out. And okay, students, thank you. See you guys tomorrow. And everybody, have a great evening.
Thank you. You as well. Thank you.
Thank you,
much,
Julia. We
Deb.
appreciate you coming.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Take
All
care.
right.
And good to meet you all. Blessings to you.
Thank you.
Take care.
And anybody want to hang around for the after conference, after talk, you can stay online with us.
And Janice, I didn't get Kelly's last name too.
And you know what? I don't want to call her I'll have to look it up. I'll make sure to
Okay.
look it up.
Okay, all right.
I will
It's good
do
to-
that. So anybody got any discussion they just want to talk about in general?
Well, I was going to ask you for the judges now, how many of us are first time versus the returning judges?
So Connie's been with us. This is her second year, and not
Okay.
sure if she's done any other judging for within J&J, since
Okay.
they're our sponsors and they got a post on us. But other than that, you guys this is your first time with us. So
The rest of us are first timers? All right,
Yes.
all right. We don't have to feel alone then. right?
No, you do not. You got a family. You guys got a family now.
Okay.
And our goal, like I said, I was telling Dr. Bimley, just want to have a good pool of judges, especially those who will have the experience of doing IT showcase, because I mean, you guys will know the ropes and you know what to expect, etc. So, and again, you guys are first time users of the
I was gonna say we got a
As a
good
reviewer.
platform there. Yeah, reviewer. We got
so any feedback you can give for that too, that would be great as well. So
Okay.
I see we still got a couple of students hanging out.
Yes.
Since when you want to hang on, Majesty? I'm surprised.
And I also meant to ask what Mr. Neely's first name was. You all referred to him as Mr. Neely, but I didn't get your first name, Brother
Oh,
Neely.
I was calling Mr. Neely.
First name is Bernard.
Bernard Neely. Okay, thank you, sir.
A lot of folks call me Bernie, but I accept Bernard, Bernie, Mr. Neely. It doesn't matter.
What graduate school are you going to?
Well, Regent's University, and I chose Regent because when COVID first started,